What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are just a week away from the Autumn Nations Cup that's going to be coming up. I have done a quick video on how the tournament itself will actually work. If you guys haven't seen that, definitely go check that out after this video so you can get a bit of a further breakdown as to how the tournament works as a whole. This video in particular is going to be about who do I think is going to win this tournament. So what we're going to do, just go through the tables, go through the teams that are in it, the likelihood of winning, and judge who I think is going to be the overall winner. So, let's kick off this game of rugby in the background and see who I think's going to be the winner. Alright, so this game is underway. So, first we're going to look at the Group A. So, for those who don't know, the Autumn Nations Cup is going to be 8 teams that are split into 2 groups of 4. And then those groups are going to play each other. I do explain it in my other video a little bit more in depthly if you want to go watch that after this. So, Group A, I'll check it on screen super quick. So, Group A includes Wales, England, Ireland and Georgia. So, for me, this is going to be one of the toughest groups to call out of the two of them. There's a lot of big teams in there. I mean, there's 3 obviously of the main tier 1 teams. You know, they're all in the top 5 in the world currently. For me, I would say you probably rule Georgia out pretty quickly of this. Their game they played against Scotland for their warm-up game, they looked very out of shape to a degree that I was actually quite surprised. I thought Georgia-Scotland was going to be not a close affair, but at least, you know, within about 10 points or so. It just didn't end up being that way. Do I see Georgia beating Ireland? No, I think Ireland have got too many attacking options and a little bit too much structure. I don't see Georgia being able to beat them. Same goes for England. I just don't see Georgia being able to beat England anywhere along there. They've just got too many strike runners, too many options for strong kicking, you know, getting behind those lines. The Georgians seem very, very flat in like a wall defence running forwards. I don't see Georgia being able to take on the England variety of attacks. And then Wales are of course having a very poor Six Nations under the new management and their team not really gelling the most likely. So Georgia most likely to take a win in that group would be against Wales, but still I think Wales should be leaps and bounds ahead. They'll be wanting to do better in this tournament after having quite a poor Six Nations on the whole. So I can see Wales just smashing that Georgia game as a bit of a statement game, and then they'll see how they get on against Ireland and England. So I would rule Georgia out of being able to take that table by any means. Moving on to Wales. Wales, I think, are probably going to win against Georgia. Wales versus Ireland is their first game. That's going to be the opening game of the tournament as a whole. That's going to be happening this Friday, which is going to be fun to look forward to. I don't see Wales being able to beat Ireland. I think Ireland will be super annoyed at losing that Six Nations. They went into that game only needing to beat France by 6 points, and they would win the Six Nations. And of course, they came away with that loss to France. They won't be happy with that tournament. They're going to want to have a bit of redemption there. I see Ireland coming out strong. I can see Ireland going in there and beating Wales. Wales have got a lot of work to do on their team to gel it together again in a very short amount of time, and I think it's just not quite enough time for them to get that together. I see it being closer. I see Wales wanting to do a lot better after that Six Nations, but I think Ireland will probably win that game, and I think the same goes for England. I just think England-Wales is going to be, it hasn't been decided where it's going to be yet. Obviously there's no crowds, so it doesn't particularly matter about home advantage or anything, but there's still a bit of a home advantage depending on when you play. I think England-Wales is going to be a painful game for me to watch as a Wales supporter, but I can see England smashing that game. They're looking in good form, to be fair. England and Wales just have far too many holes, and England aren't the team, especially with big counter-attack runners. I see Wales and their scramble defence not being good enough. I see England taking that. So, all that aside, it comes down, in my opinion, to England or Ireland to win their table. So, England are the new Six Nations champions. They've taken over, obviously. Ireland, almost the Six Nations champions. Between the two of them, England did beat Ireland in the Six Nations, so they're going to be going in at the advantage there. England versus Ireland is going to be being played in Twickenham, so there's a home advantage there. England are going to want to play well after their Six Nations victory. Obviously, they didn't do particularly well in that World Cup final, but they still managed to make it, so you can't take it away from them. The team's looking very strong. My opinion, I'm going to see England winning this Group A table. I think Ireland are just not quite up to that standard that they want to be yet. There's a couple of players that are making a lot of mistakes that really shouldn't. I can see England taking that. So my prediction for the winner of Group A is going to be England. And then I think it's going to go England, Ireland, Wales, Georgia. So that's going to be my prediction for Group A. So, looking at Group B. So, Group B consists of France, Scotland, Italy, and Fiji. We'll start at the bottom in this table that I've got on screen here. Fiji. Who are Fiji going to be able to do well? Obviously, we remember Fiji actually lost to Uruguay in the World Cup, which was an absolute shocker, considering some of the names that are in that Fijian team, you know, especially people like Semi Randrada on the wing. I can see Fiji wanting to do well in this tournament, but I'm not sure quite how they'll step up against some of the higher nations. Let's work our way up. So Fiji versus Italy, I think will be the game Fiji will target the most. That's the game they want to win. I think there's actually a chance they could win against there. Italy have played well through the Six Nations. Obviously, they've now got rid of Sergio Parise. They've brought in some bigger players, Negri, Pellegrini. They're going to be able to have a better sort of back row of the forwards to try and do better. I don't know if I see Fiji being able to beat them, but that's the game I'm looking forward to the most. I think if I listen to my head, I can see Italy winning that game, but I would love to see Fiji manage to take a win here and beat, you know, a tier 1 nation. I think that'll be a lot of fun for them to do. Fiji versus Scotland, again, another good game, but I think it'll go very similar to when Scotland played Georgia in the warm-ups. I can see Scotland taking that one. Obviously, Scotland had a great game against Wales. Very, very cohesive as a team. I managed to beat Wales at not quite home at Parky Scarlets, but it's still in Wales. Beating Wales and then, you know, I think they ended 4th in the Six Nations. So they've played very well. I'm seeing Scotland look in very, very good form. I don't think Fiji can beat Scotland. I think Scotland will win that. And then Fiji-France, I think, will actually be a bit of a blowout. France seem to be looking so strong currently that I just don't see France losing to Fiji. I can't even imagine what would have to happen. I think they'd have to lose about 3 players in order to beat Fiji. So I think, fortunately for me, I think Fiji are probably going to come 4th in that group. So looking at Italy, I think Italy are going to beat the Fiji team. Italy versus Scotland, well, I mean, the rest of their group is their Six Nations teams. I might as well rattle these off in 2 goes. Italy won't beat Scotland. Italy won't beat France. It's such a shame to say. They played well against both teams, but they just don't quite have that ability level to take on the teams. There have been, you know, in the past few years, a lot of games where Italy and Scotland is playing for last place in the Six Nations, but Scotland seem to have been doing very, very well, especially in the last sort of 2 years. They've really stepped their game up, and I think they're going to be able to pull away a little bit here now. I think it's going to be left there. I think Italy are going to remain in that 3rd spot, and I just don't see them beating either Scotland or France. So the decision of who's going to win Group B to me comes down to this France-Scotland. So people will remember in the Six Nations, the reason that France didn't actually win this Six Nations, in my opinion, was because they lost that game to Scotland completely against the run of play. Just a shocking defeat. I don't know if I see the same thing happening again. I did look up the odds favourites for that game, and Scotland and France are even odds, which I think is bizarre. France have played superb this Six Nations. They just beat everyone, realistically. That game against Scotland was a bit of a shock to the system. I think they went in thinking too much of themselves, and they just sort of went against them a little bit. Obviously, they managed to beat England. They managed to beat Ireland and beat Wales. I mean, they've played very, very well. That game against Ireland, France just looked menacing. This is a very different France team to the one we've seen for the past few years, and it's very different, especially from that team we saw in the quarterfinals of the World Cup versus Wales. I think France are looking strong. I think they've got a lot of new players coming in now. They have gelled together very well. Shaun Edwards is doing superb work in their defensive line. France are just not conceding anything. They are refusing to give penalties away if they can help it. I think France versus Scotland. Scotland will go in with belief they can win it, but to me, France are going to win that game, and I see them being able to win Group B. It's already in order. I can see France winning, Scotland 2nd, Italy 3rd, Fiji in 4th. I think is how Group B will finish. So from this, we move on now. So the team that's going to win this tournament on a whole comes from the winner of Group A playing the winner of Group B. So to me, that is going to be an England versus France final. So the breakdown here. Who's going to win that game? Well, there's a whole bunch of things we've got to look at for this one, in my opinion. So, first off, where are they playing? Twickenham has been decided as where England will be playing their final game. That is set, so England will have the home advantage in this game versus France, which again, no crowds, doesn't make a huge difference, but England will not want to lose in Twickenham. We go back to the Six Nations. France beat England. And France beat them pretty convincingly, in my opinion. And recently have beaten Ireland very convincingly. England, you know, although they had a few months out, they were coming against Italy. They beat Italy very handsomely, but there were a number of mistakes they made. Can they have ironed out all those mistakes within the last sort of 2 weeks? I'm not 100% sure. I think France are looking very gelled, very cohesive. And I just think England might have a few holes there. I did have a quick look on betting sites, and currently England are the favourites to win this tournament. England currently, if you put a bet on now, is 11-10, so basically 1-1, whereas France are 11-2, which, you know, 5.5-1 if you break it down so like that. They are almost outsiders in this. They actually apparently are less likely to win this tournament than Ireland and even Scotland. Scotland are also on an 11-2. The bookies can't make up their mind which one they think will win out of that, Scotland-France, which I think is bizarre. I think France will just take that with a little bit relative ease. So the odds-on favourite is England. England get the home advantage. I think France are coming into this with a better team, a better cohesive team, a better defensive effort, and it will come down purely to the skill and effort of those England players. England do play very well, but we do find that in their pressure games, we saw it in the World Cup, they managed to beat New Zealand convincingly. And you thought, well, if they beat New Zealand, they're on to win this World Cup now. And it got down to that pressure game, the final game, and they just weren't able to do it against South Africa. I can see a similar thing happening here. France seem to lose the game for themselves at any given occasion by giving away a yellow card or a red card. I think if Shaun Edwards can just batter into their team, that not to give away stupid penalties, not to give away yellow cards, not to give away red cards, don't elbow people in the face, I can see France actually taking this. My prediction of who's going to win this Autumn Nations Cup is going to be France. I think they're going to come into this. Obviously, they've got their own World Cup coming up very soon. They're going to be hosting it. I think they want to get their team back on track. They should have won that Six Nations, in my opinion, and let themselves down. I think they're going to want to get back on track before they get to their own World Cup. So my prediction of who will win this Autumn Nations Cup will be France. I don't think it will be by a lot. I think they might beat England by maybe 10 points or so. I'd have to see the team in order to actually break down who I think was going to win, who might get injured along the way. I think England have got a tougher group to win, so they might lose more valuable players. I think France have a much easier group to win, so I definitely see France getting through to the final, and I then see France going on to beat England. Let me know what you guys think. Who's going to win in your opinion? Drop it down in the comments. I'm interested to know what lots of different people think. A lot of people will have England as favourite to this, but I just think the informed teams, I think there could be a bit of a shock here. But let me know what you guys think. If you've enjoyed this video, guys, make sure to drop it a like. It really does help the channel out. If you want to know more about the Autumn Nations Cup, go check out my other video that breaks down the tournament a little bit on how it all works together in deciding what position people get and how people win the tournament and all that sort of stuff. And if you're enjoying the rugby content, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I do sort of preview games that are coming up. I play them on Rugby 20 as the current game of choice, and we go through some of the teams that have been announced for those games. I'm going to be trying to pump out those videos. Obviously 4 games a week is going to be a bit tough. So they might be staggered a little bit, and I can only apologise for that if it does end up being the case. But make sure you subscribe just to keep up to date with all of our videos as they're coming out. I will see you all next time, guys. Bye bye.